Yeah, so essentially it's just to put in the schedule somehow. So we will start with a short introduction, which is not listed here. First point of Embrace. So it's just a welcome in what Embrace is, and because this seminar is funded by that project. And then we will have some experience for data harmonization and integration across platform. We will have the pleasure to hear the French experience by Alexia and Adrien. Also, how to migrate an existing data system to online eBMS systems. So it's not an integration and harmonization, but it's actually moving from a database to the online eBMS system. This will be presented by Jon and Richie and Mitchell, maybe, or Michelle and Richie will help in the discussion and question. So this is the Irish experience. And then we have some information about the latest improvement on the butterfly count app and the web portal, the user interface and the validation process. This is being done by David and Cristina. Data pipeline and workflow used to produce European GBI quality control. So I will present essentially how we do the data integration in eBMS database, all the step of quality control of the data, the database validation, and also when we produce the GPI. So hopefully this will be reassuring to most that we have some quality check and quality control in the process. And then we will finish with Chris presenting some strategy and vision. And this will be about governance, data agreement, infrastructure, and sharing and integration. So this will be presented by Chris. Every presentation is relatively short, 10 to 15 minutes, but then to leave us room for discussion, 5 to 10 minutes. If we don't need 10 minutes, we just move to the next. So there's no time schedule. This is recorded, so can be visioned after. And I will stop sharing. Let's go back, see. So essentially, I will ask Chris to quickly present or have a presentation of the Embrace project, as Chris is leading this project.
Thank you, Reto. Well, I don't have a presentation for this. I have a presentation at the end, but I think many of you are familiar with the Embrace project, but still it's good to look at the project. How far are we and what have we already achieved and where are we moving to? It's good to remember the Embrace project is funded by the European Union, and it runs over 2 years, so 25 and 26. So the end in December 26, we will finish the project, and it consists of there are two major tasks in it, and one is the streamlining of the calculation of the GBI, which should result in update of the Grassland Butterfly Indicator, the GBI. At the last, we recently did the update up to 24, and we hope that at the end of this year, we will be able to do the update up to 25. And I think that at the end, it would be good if we could update every year at the end of a year to the year before, so that we have always regular updates of the Grassland Butterfly Indicator, which is now, at least in what I've heard, around half of the countries have chosen the GBI as one of the indicators in the Article 11 of the Nature Restoration Regulation. So that's good. It means that these countries will report on their national GBI and also will have to take action to turn it upwards. The other part of the Embrace project is on the further development of BMSs, of the eBMS in Europe. So um, workshops like this one raise the capacity, building further capacity, especially in Eastern and Southern Europe, parts where there are still gaps in the transact. And that's the other part, which is mainly done by Cristina and Irma and Sue Collins and some others. They mostly do that part of the work. The part on the calculations of GBI is mainly done by Reto, and I also help him with that. So a smaller group works on that. So we are now at the point, so we're almost halfway the second year of the Embrace project, and we are working to finish the streamlining of the data flow so that we can actually calculate the GBI every year up to the year before. And that is what was one of the main aims so that we are able to do that. Okay, I think that's more or less where we are now.
Yeah.
If there are
Second.
questions or remarks, then this is the moment.
Yeah, that's excellent. So I also put a note in the chat. You can use the chat if you have questions that are emerging when people are talking or presenting. So it can be a reminder, or if you prefer, formulate your question in written. We can read them after each talk presentation. You can also wait. We have time allocated for question and also discussion. So we will try our best to answer every question that we can. But some question might open discussion, and everybody's welcome to join and contribute to these questions. Goran, you have your hand raised. You have already a question.
Yes, thank you very much. Chris, one question. This project is founded by EU, and will the data like from Switzerland or I don't know, from Great Britain now, because they're not the EU, will they have an impact on these calculations, or will there be two separate calculations for the GBI for
Yeah,
EU and the rest?
Yeah, like in the last report, we did already do EU and Europe. So I think we will keep on doing that, where Europe means EU plus UK, Norway, and Switzerland. Those are the main, at this moment, the main countries outside the EU. But we do it, and it makes a difference, especially Switzerland and UK have lots of transacts. So it also makes a difference. Especially yeah, what you see is that the error, so the confidence interval of the European one is smaller because of this. Yeah.
Thank you.
I will comment on this later in the talk also, just to say that your data are used even and contribute somehow to the flight curve and phenology. So everything that is in the database is used to inform that. I think we can move with the first experience presented by the French. Adrien and Alexia, I will invite you to share your screen and introduce you.
Yeah. So while Alexia is opening the presentation, I can do a brief presentation. So I am Adrien, and I work as a web developer for OPIE, which is a French association for insect study and conservation. Alexia is the data analyst working at OPIE. And in the meeting, there is also Mathieu, which is the French coordinator for the eBMS. So he was at the initiative of most of what you will see in this brief presentation. We will do this in two parts. The first is Alexia presenting the whole process of integrating our national data into the eBMS, and then I will talk briefly about our experiment on GeoNature, which is a software meant to record occurrences, and how we configured it to be able to send data to the eBMS more easily than what is done until now.
Yeah, so hi. I had the Herculean task of formatting scattered historical data in order to append it to the eBMS. I can wait to attend the Irish experience about migrating an existing data system, because I'm pretty sure we have similar issues to deal with. You are here actually to listen what my colleague Adrien has to say, but I'm going to introduce the French context. So STEF is the French butterfly monitoring scheme. It started in 2005, and it's polar walk. The data format is quite unambiguous. We have some taxonomic groups like yellow coleus for similar species. And the method is not exactly the same as the eBMS. So in this screen, you can see maybe a familiar picture of the eBMS transect, which is one big transect divided into some sections. And in the other side of the screen, I'm going to show you how the STEF works. So we have a site, which is a mesh from a grid, which can be chosen or given to the participants. And in this site, which is called, which is a transect actually, well, but it's the site in the STEF, we are going to have sections in similar environment habitats. So for instance, we could have 3 sections this way. The thing is, in the STEF methods, a section was called transect, so this was quite hard to navigate. And for each section, we write the beginning of the section as the length is supposed to be 10 minutes. It's not in meters, it's 10 minutes. So here we have a comparison between STEF and eBMS method. In STEF, we have a section which is 10 minutes length. The transect is actually a mesh from a grid, and time is noted at the start of each section. In eBMS, as you know, a transect is 1 kilometer long. To split in 4 to 10 sections, the transect is, well, a transect, it's a continuous line, and time is noted at the start and at the end of the transect. So the data management of STEF was at the beginning some Excel templates that we would share with all the participants, and all the participants would have their own Excel to fill and to send to the coordinator. Then we had a database some people started to use, but others keep using the Excels. And since last year, we asked participants to use the eBMS database, but some of the participants cannot work with that because they need to have their data in their regional database. So we had to develop something in the, GeoNature. GeoNature is French informatic program database. So some national parks use it, and it's open source, so everyone can get the code and install it on some server. And well, Adrien is going to talk to you more about that after. So now we ask participants to please stop using Excel spreadsheet. It's so hard to integrate, and to use eBMS or GeoNature systems. So the existing data we have, we wanted to use it, of course, and to append it to the eBMS system. So it was a lot of Excels, this kind of Excels. So sometimes it was okay, because if this is a template I can code in order to get the information, of course. But of course, as you know, it's tricky. Everyone with an Excel cannot will add columns for their own usage or stuff. So sometimes I didn't have the localization. When I asked to the participant, they would send me sometimes a map like this. So I had to draw the lines in order to get it in the database. Sometimes I had this kind of transects or sections. So this one, I'm like, okay, maybe I can understand that there are 4 sections, but sometimes it was just, I don't know what to do with that. So we had several sites where I could gather the data. Sometimes it was complete and I could send it to the eBMS, but sometimes time is missing, or length, or geometry, so it's hard to use that. And I spent 200 hours to save 97,000 occurrence data. So it was a lot of time, but those are a lot of data. So, but we wish spend less time in the future thanks to Adrien's work.
Thank you. So yes, I will talk about what we did on GeoNature, which is the software Alexia presented. So the idea is that it's free software developed by French National Parks, and it's the main goal is to record occurrence data, but it's also easy to extend through modules. And it's used in by various associations, either on the whole national territory or by regions for specific regions. An interesting aspect of GeoNature for us is that it comes with a special module for monitoring protocols, which is exactly what we needed for something like STERF and eBMS.
Nice.
This module is very generic in that, in the meaning that you can configure as many protocols as you want. A protocol so you can have in the same GeoNature installation, you can have a system for I don't know, frog protocols or for following birds. And in our cases, we needed to develop something new specifically for the eBMS. It's mostly just a bunch of JSON files, so you have to have a bit of a technical expertise to do this, but it's not really hard to do. The JSON files are there to configure the aspects of the main concepts of the module. The idea is that you have 2 geographical levels. You have base sites, which can be grouped into site groups. For each site, you can define visits, and these visits can have known or 1 or more observations. And the module also allows us to write an SQL query to generate CSV exports from the database. So the challenge here was to configure this module so it could work out with the data format that was as easily as possible to integrate into the eBMS. So actually, we work more on the indices side, which is the backend of the eBMS. And we had to translate the concepts from the monitoring module into the eBMS, but that was rather easy. The site group can be translated into a transect. Each site becomes a section. The visit is a walk or a sample, and each observation is an occurrence. And it could be translated more or less one-to-one through a big SQL query. There was some things that were a bit harder, such as the fact that in indices, you make your sample or walk on a whole transect. So the walk is for a whole transect for a day, and the sample will take into account every section of the transect. Whereas in GeoNature, you do 1 visit per site, and the site group is more an abstract entity just for regrouping together different sites. But it works it works okay. The main goal was to let structures keep owning their data because they already record staff data into their GeoNature installations. And for some, it was hard to tell themselves that they would have to record everything into another database, such as the eBMS. And they wanted to keep writing their data in their own database first, but to have a system to allow export to the eBMS as easily as possible. So that was the goal of this module. The export is straightforward. They just have to click a button to export 4 CSV files for transect sections, visits, and observations. And we worked closely with Jim Bacon, who just went into retirement, but had time to write extensive documentation about the database format they expected us to send us. So yeah, in this year we have like a big documentation on a web page that describes how to create the kind of data format which is as easily as possible to integrate through their import system, because they can like upload a bunch of CSV, and the indices system will map together the columns automatically. So it's just a few clicks to import data from GeoNature into Indicia. So that was a bit of a victory for us.
It is. Thank you for listening. This is our contacts if needed, and we're here to answer if there are any questions.
Thank you.
Wow, that was excellent. I never appreciate actually the amount of work that you had to put in, putting all these Excel sheet, and especially the bunch of transect. I mean, that was mind-blowing. Thank you for doing that job. And it's every data count here, and it's a lot of time, but I assume that a lot of things has been automated also or scripted now, so you can maybe have next time will be easier if you encounter that. Hopefully you will never encounter it again.
Thank you.
But it reminds me of the journey that we had when we developed the first eBMS, and we started receiving data in Excel spreadsheet, sometime also in different languages. So for me, it was a little bit challenging. But the site transect conversion to section to transect and site, whatever it is in STERF, and that also took me about a month to realize that a site was actually a transect, and a transect was a section. Any question about the process and the journey, and maybe how this can be implemented to others, and maybe also a discussion about if you have similar issue or problem or challenge? David?
Yeah, thanks for sharing those experiences. So am I right in understanding that you'll now have, in France, you'll have some people using the eBMS system directly, either through the app or the website, and you'll also have people using the GeoNature system. So will you, and you'll upload the GeoNature data into eBMS, will you also try and keep a complete copy in GeoNature, or is it just for data capture?
We are gonna keep the data people will send us, and that we will send then to the eBMS. We will try to have like a copy. Our goal is that all the data are in the eBMS. That's our goal. Then if we can have a copy of that, I guess it's always more secure, but our main goal is having all the data in eBMS.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I agree. It's good to always keep some backup options.
Yeah.
I remember we had this discussion actually to make that possible, where Adrien, you were asking for a unique identifier used in the GeoBonds, GeoNature system. In Indicia or eBMS online system, we can add a foreign key to every record. So we have we don't use the same standard as GeoNature is using, But if GeoNature send us and we put in data, we can put a foreign ID for that observation and record. So when Adrien or someone else from France extract the data from eBMS, they can always refer to that original ID from GeoNature, so you don't create duplicate by pushing and then retrieving. So you can always track where it's from and keep that unique identifier to the unique record.
Yeah, thank you, Reto, for bringing that up, because I wanted to talk about it and I was forgetting. So yeah, it's actually very important for us to keep track of the data, as we are, else we can have so much duplicates, and they are so hard to find after that, because data can be changed a bit. And yeah, we use it a lot in France. We fight for more use of it. And so it's important for us. Thank you.
Just to comment on this also, when we extract the data, there's a PostgreSQL has a function to generate those keys. So we could always generate a unique key to fit in those that were uploaded directly to the eBMS system. So the out export would have the foreign key produced by GeoNature, but also one equivalent standard from eBMS Online. If there's no more question, I mean, there was a few questions in the chat, but maybe I read them, or you can read them. So essentially, it was a 10-minute length equal 10-minute active count. Yes, this is what Mathieu confirmed. So it's somehow a fixed length. I guess that depends of how fast someone walk, how many butterfly they see, and the distance might vary in the different environment also.
Yeah.
Good. So it's time to move to the second experience, which is slightly different, which is the Irish database migration. I will leave Jon or Michelle to start.
Thanks, Reto. So we're just going to discuss about how we migrated our whole system from a legacy indices system to the eBMS Online. So just as a way of introduction, I'll just introduce me and my colleague. So my name is Michelle Judge, and I'm the data manager at the National Biodiversity Data Centre, which is based in the southeast of Ireland. I'm involved with the Irish Butterfly Monitoring Scheme, with the analysis and the backend database. And my colleague Jon is the head of digital services at the data centre, and he was heavily involved, along with our other colleague Richie, in the technical side of the migration. So just to offer a bit of background about the data centre before we get started. So essentially, we're the national centre for the collation, management and sharing of biodiversity data. So at the minute, we have just over 9.2 million records, and they're available on our national mapping portal across nearly 20,000 species for everyone to freely use. As well as mapping species occurrences, the data centre also feeds into decision making in both national and international legislation. And I suppose the most relevant thing that we do to this webinar is, of course, that we track the trends and changes in species that are threatened with extinction. So our two longest running schemes are the Irish Butterfly Monitoring Scheme and the Bumblebee Monitoring Schemes, both of which we migrated to the UK CEH this year. So I'm going to pass over to my colleague, Jon. Oh, sorry. I thought Jon's slide was coming up here, but I'll continue. So just a bit about Ireland and the Butterfly Monitoring Scheme we have here. So the scheme was established in 2008, and it's Ireland's longest running citizen science and insect monitoring scheme. So we have 35 species of butterfly in Ireland. 3 of those are migratory, and I know that's a lot less than a lot of other European countries. So just to give you kind of an idea about the amount and numbers of data that we were working with, we moved around 120,000 records of about 200 individual transects. Those numbers are only approximate because, like I said previously, our bumblebee data was moved as well. So this table just shows the actual numbers of recorders, transects, records, and butterflies for Ireland over the last 5 years. The number of transects has been quite stagnant for the last couple of years, but we're hoping we got funding to hire an officer to manage both the bumblebee and the butterfly monitoring scheme this year. So we're hoping that that'll bring back a bit of focus to both schemes and encourage more recording, which would be absolutely brilliant. So then, of course, we export our data to the eBMS scheme. And up until this year, that has been done by sending Excel files onto Reto. So you'll have one less thing to worry about with us moving to the scheme this year. So now I will pass over to my colleague, Jon. He's going to talk a bit more about the technicalities of moving our systems.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Michelle. So yeah, as Michelle said, my name's Jon Hawkins. I'm the head of the newly formed digital services team within the National Biodiversity Data Centre. I joined 2 years and brought together a number of staff within the centre and have recruited others. Richie Hindley's on our call, has joined since, and he was instrumental in helping us with this migration and be available for answering questions at the end. One of the things with the background in the National Biodiversity Data Centre, we went through a few lean years whereby there wasn't a lot of regular investment or known investment would continue beyond the end of each year. So there was a little bit of stagnation around some of the work that could be done by our staff and developing out systems and the recruitment of staff. And thankfully, that's all changed when we were established as a company by limited guarantee a couple of years ago, and we've since become a charity, a registered charity as well. Part of myself coming in and having a bit of a budget and having to review what we were doing led us to then start looking at some of our existing applications that were being used and what the long-term future for those were. So as Michelle mentioned, when I joined, I was made aware of the Legacy Edition indices application, which was implemented around 2008, was kindly supplied by UKCEH. So we basically took a back-end copy of that database. This was stood up by John Van Breda, who's one of the core developers of that original application and still well involved within that, thankfully. So that system being in place, one of the key things there was it was out of support. It was running very well. You recorders were very happy with it. No mobile elements to it, but running well. However, because of code being substantially out of date, sitting on old tech on the server as well, it was kind of ring fenced in our DMZ area with sort of a do not touch type thing. Data was being extracted from it at the end of each year, but it was understood that we had technical issues and needed to do something with it. Some of the security vulnerabilities could have been removed, but many of them would have required a complete rewrite of the code. So essentially an update and replacement was required. And with now mobile working being much more and mobile tools, is that, could we start to embrace some additional functionality that we're aware of? So I thankfully came on the back of some original sort of explanatory calls between NBDC and Dr. David Roy at UKCEH about the potential for the centre to look to rehost the data, or basically the options available to us. We have a number of bespoke applications and hosting different elements here at National Biodiversity Data Centre. And we needed to make a decision about rationalization, trying to make greater use of software as a service and trying to reduce our reliance on bespoke applications. So one of this areas is then trying to make use of software as a service, obviously a cloud-hosted platform, which is somebody else's computer. In this case, of course, it's eBMS, which is located at UK Centre for Ecology and Hydrology. So because the overall eBMS system was available, the backend database and all the various infrastructure that Dr. Roy manages with his team, this was seen as a good potential solution to help us consider a future model whereby we could make use of eBMS and remove dependencies on our local network, our local servers, databases, backups, keeping code up to date, and make use of that, and basically cut out that point where data was being transferred to eBMS, and could we use the system and instead bring data back from it. So by doing this, it saved us considerable time and money going forward. The project has been, of course, time consuming, but going forward, the upgrading of existing applications and to try and support them locally is now removed, because that will be done centrally. And as we can see with eBMS being updated at the moment, we don't have to concern ourselves with that. We just need to be aware of it. Of course, with all the continuing investment and support of the eBMS system, it means there's efficient and secure processing of data and the relevant security around that. And we know that there's, as I say, ongoing maintenance and updates there and regular backups. Now, so that's the technical benefits. I'll just hand back now to Michelle just to cover off the user and country coordinator benefits of looking to moving across.
Thanks, Jon. So starting with the benefits, I suppose, from a user experience, well, there's really improved reporting functionalities since we moved to the new system, and that includes the use of, or the fact that the users can now upload images, which wasn't an option to them before. There's also lots of YouTube tutorials, the manuals that are available to the community, which are really, really important. And we feel that our volunteers will have a heightened sense of community now, because although they already knew that the data was being incorporated by the eBMS, they can really get the feel of this wider community through the use of the new system. There's also, of course, the additional supporting functionality, such as the butterfly count app, the 15-minute count, and of course the ability to record moths as well, all of which we'll hopefully start using in the future once everybody gets used to the new change. From our own experience in the back end, having the support there is absolutely brilliant. We were also able to customize some of the tools that are available. So we now have customized habitats for Ireland, and we also have a customized country butterfly list, because like I mentioned earlier, we have 35 species, and we want to ensure that our volunteers weren't flooded with long lists of species that weren't available in Ireland. We really wanted to be sure we weren't going to introduce any errors that that we could avoid. So it's great having that customized list as well. The online validation tool is also going to save an awful lot of time. So for us, the process was very, very manual in our last setup. So the data, as Jon alluded to, was in a ring-fenced database. So extracting that data actually took a lot of work. We also had to generate our zero abundances separately. And then all the validation was done manually via Excel, and then brought everything back together before any analysis or anything could be done, such as exporting it to the eBMS. So a lot of benefits for us.
So I'm just now going to just sort of take you through sort of the high level timeline of what we did. So as I said, there had been conversations around looking to doing this, and basically we enacted the project back in July last year. The first thing was to, as well as working with UKCEH, was to appoint a consultant to assist us with good knowledge. So I'm glad that I'm delighted to say that Jon van Breda joined us as our consultant to basically assist us and advise us, and along with Compass Informatics, our technical support partner. So this helped us plan and ensure the project going forward. But one of the first things we had to do was for the country coordinator and Dr. Liam Lysite, who's the overall responsibility for the scheme, is we did have to ensure that the eBMS system was indeed fit for purpose, that we could, without a bump, bring new recorders to a new system without and make sure that the functionality they were used to was there. So there was a period of sort of due diligence just to make sure that was going to fit well. Following that, we then went through a data protection impact assessment because this was going to be very important. Data was currently being hosted on our servers in the office here that myself and Michelle are sat in today, and we were going to be picking up data and essentially moving it across the sea and dropping it into the UK. And of course, Brexit had to be considered and the impact on that, and I'll be more about that in a moment. And then we had to put the relevant data sharing agreements and ensure everything was in place for that. Once that area was passed, we then created Jon van Breda. We then worked with him to create a secure area on our local servers here for him to test the migration of data and prepare that data without moving it anywhere else. He then went off and configured the recording forms on the eBMS development area so that we could then bring across in November some test data so we could test those forms. And as Michelle mentions, that sort of the species list, the habitat list, and of course, nothing goes according to plan. There's a lot of going backwards and forwards. So we discovered some various different elements along the way, and I'll touch on some of more of those experiences later on. And then obviously, one of the key things is we kind of, NBDC kind of brought a forensic eye onto the web eBMS system because that's the system our current existing recorders were used to. And we know many of you use a lot of the mobile applications. So we did highlight a couple of things that needed to be resolved in that, and thankfully they were resolved, which then allowed us then in March of 2026 to communicate to our recorders ahead of the new season about the move, highlight to them the new training materials so that we could launch in time for the new monitoring season at the beginning of April. And I'm delighted to say that we met that. So the technical the process, a lot of this was in terms of the agreements and the data protection impact assessment. While this is quite a laborious task, it does hold the organisation and indeed myself as to what it is we're trying to do. Data protection impact assessment basically sets out what the aim of moving one piece of data from one location to the other, makes you ensure that you're considering the account data that you're holding for a particular recorder, how that links to transact data, and how that will be moved securely, that you reduce as much risk as possible of anything being accidentally leaked or in that area. As I mentioned, data processing and sharing agreements had to be put in place. There was already an agreement in place, of course, for us to supply data to the eBMS from the Irish Butterfly Monitoring Scheme. However, we needed a new data sharing agreement because the intention was to move all of our data across, so into a new repository for analysis now and into the future. But we needed an agreement to bring that data back to Ireland so that we could carry out analysis locally here and, where applicable, upload it into our biodiversity maps system as well. It was also, as part of this, we obviously had to consider the long-term element of data, and so therefore included an area where repatriation of data should an agreement come to an end, and God forbid that anything happened with the eBMS system itself, that we could bring that data back should we ever need to stand up our own system. But obviously these are just fail-safes, things through data protection impact assessment that you just need to note and ensure you have a process and you've considered this before you do anything. One of the key things, of course, with Brexit, you must be told by my accent, I'm quite familiar with that whole impact of that, is that we needed to ensure that by picking up data that was within Ireland and relating to Irish data protection legislation and indeed the EU, is how that would fit within UK data protection. So we did actually involve our lawyers to check that off. I'm very pleased to say that working with David and the data protection officer there, and there was no issue there because of the eBMS tracks European funding, and also the UK they keep in lockstep with European data protection legislation, as it's certainly not in there. It would not be a good idea for them to move away from it because of the impact that would cause. So this wasn't an issue, but we obviously just from due diligence wanted to make sure the agreement did note both Irish and UK data protection legislation, so that was covered for us. Regarding the transfer of data, so it was mentioned earlier about moving across of spreadsheets, but when considering about actually moving data that you've got recorders information attached to, we needed to be very, very safe about the way we were going to do that. So we created a secure area on our servers, and the whole part of this was with Jon van Breda, that no data was ever copied locally onto any of his devices, that basically it would all be prepared on our servers. And then when we were ready, we would manage the data to be dropped directly onto the UK CEH tenancy. And again, delighted to say that by working with Jon van Breda and his close working relationship with Dr. David Roy and UKCEH, this made this all very possible for us to negotiate that and to meet that requirement. So just some final things, just some points to consider was, as I say, we were looking, because our old indices system has now been shut down here, we didn't want to split our data out. Never a good idea to have this bit of data here and new records over there, was to transfer all our transact and record data. It's important to note that because we were using an old legacy indices system, our data was very similarly structured to not many changes had occurred into the basic structure of a transact. And so we, while data still did need to be reformatted, the key thing there was to note is that transents are linked to a recorder's email address. A key consideration was not to be trying to transfer account details, so not transferring people's names, not transferring their email address as part of their account. Let's say we did have to transfer that as part of the transact, but also trying to transfer passwords. We did not want to get anywhere near that, even though there's very secure ways of doing that, but it just made it a lot safer that no account details were transferred. There was, and I'll get onto the process of how we manage that in a moment. The key consideration was we were considering an inactive transact versus an active transact. So really working with Liam and Michelle to try and identify who are the active recorders. So if there are inactive recorders, well, those transacts, they would be reassigned to the country coordinator admin account. And while we thought, well, we'll just go back 2 or 3 years, we can see which transacts are active. Of course, as you go forward, then you suddenly realize that user A wasn't going to move, user B was retiring this year, and so on and so forth. So there is a little bit of course, tidy up to be done on that. But the key thing there is to have a good think about what are your active transacts and where there are inactive, and you're already bringing across that historical data, or you hope that transact will be picked up by a new recorder in the future, is to move that against the admin account. And to help us there, we did keep a lookup table of those original recorder data, which are held securely here. So from the user's point of view, recorders then were invited to create a new account on the eBMS system. So they had to go to a new page, eBMS page. We asked them to create with their original email address. Well, of course, many of these had created accounts many, many years ago. That email address may no longer be valid to them, or they may not have access to it. But where it was, transacts and records, John Van Breda had created it in such a way that when they registered with their same email address, transacts and records would then automatically link to that account. And I'm pleased to say that was very successful. But of course, not all registered users that was possible. So we did have, with the country coordinator, we made sure we had enough accounts to basically manage that process and manage the reallocating onto new addresses. Also, it was key to point out that not to suddenly send it out to all recorders, that you wanted to test the whole communication and user experience with a small group before inviting a wider group to join. As I say, country coordinator accounts, we created more than one account so that we're not just trying, that we have got sort of failback on that. And also we established a Butterflies Island mailbox as well for people to email into with their queries, so it could be managed by more than one member of staff. As Michelle mentioned, localized settings were set. An unintended consequence, I think for every other country now, is that if I understand it correctly, through our need to have our species list, is now possible to have country settings for this, and it's also possible to have country settings for habitats, and we now are very pleased to say that is very closely aligned. It's very important to consider recorders' existing experience versus new. While we all might be very familiar with computer systems and configuring them, we have to consider that many of our recorders are different age profiles and different skill elements. Some no used to using mobiles, and we still have people submitting paper forms. So it was important that when accessing eBMS, that even the default listings and how things would be sorted could be clearly communicated, but also ensure that we put as many little bumps in the road as possible to try and keep that user experience as neat as possible and as logical as possible from one to the other. And so we won't be introducing mobile options this year. We're going to let everyone settle and have one full monitoring season using the online eBMS system, and then we will start to promote mobile tools following that. When to communicate with recorders so as not to confuse. Of course, when doing things like data protection impact statements and you're moving data, we wanted to communicate very early on in the process. However, The other thing was, well, what were recorders currently focusing on during the end of July 2025 was, well, it was actually getting the 2025 records onto the system. So in fact, we held firm and we made sure that all those records were on, and we gave them all a very firm deadline of the end of December, so that in fact no data was moved across until the beginning of the year in January. So we were just using test data and local account data here. So the key thing then was recorder communications. We spent a lot of time and effort on our emails to our recorders to inform them very clearly of what was actually happening. It was important to tell them what is changing, why are we making this move, and what do they need to know, and what should they expect, and what happens with their existing data. So happy to share any of the communications we have developed here. Obviously, if people are all aware of GDPR nowadays, and we needed to ensure that people were aware that we had taken the appropriate steps on this, and we had that covered out on why we were communicating with people. And from our point of view as well, is that every recorder that we sent this email to, we had a transect, at least one transect, sitting there with their recorder email sitting against it. And so we left it for a period, and if some recorders never got back to us, well, then their transect was reassigned to the admin account, because we did not want their email address, even though it was in the back end and no one can access it, just due diligence, that everything was tidied up and only active recorders were then working forward. And the last piece of the puzzle then was just ensuring that we put a lot of time and effort into the recorder homepage to ensure that this backed up. As Michelle said, it was great now to have all the resources in terms of my walk sites, the YouTube channels, and video tutorials, and tie closely to this. And if you notice at the bottom, when you look at the privacy notices, we're calling out both the eBMS privacy notice as well as the National Biodiversity Data Centre one, so users know that their data came back. Overall, I can say that the experience has been very positive. It was very positive. Our boss, Dr. Liam Lysight, was happy. So if he's happy, we're happy. And he has overall responsibility for the scheme and is delighted with the steps we've made. And now we have a platform for him to do his validation on. UKCH worked very closely with us, and I'm pleased to say that while things like wording for agreements can be very protracted with lawyers involved and things like this was a very smooth process. We reached agreement very quickly on that. So long may everything continue, and we'll happily take questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Michelle and Jon, for this comprehensive, very clear. It was quite a thorough process. That was excellent. I'm delighted to hear that eBMS and UKCH also was very cooperative and helpful in this. Having Jon van Breden in the loop was probably a big point, a positive point on this. Maybe you can comment on this.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, the sort of tacit knowledge of somebody like that about the data, particularly someone like myself, I've got a data analysis and GIS background. So all the intricacies of how our transect data hangs together, how that looks in the back-end system, you really need someone that understands it. So it was very smooth working with Jon. He knew what he needed to do and how to get it from A to B. He can work on the eBMS development site. He can then make requests to UKCEH about potential changes to benefit everyone. Everything was done in a structured manner. And so what we also did as well is that, bringing someone in like that is, for a project like this, and the savings you have, it's a relatively low cost. And also we're keeping Jon on sort of some call off consultancy as well, is because you can't just go live on the first day and expect everything to be a bed of roses. We were going to always hit some challenges. So we've kept, we have a number of hours with him, and we expect that each year as things develop and if anything changes to support us. So really his input was absolutely vital, and I wouldn't have liked to have attempted to do it without him. That's what I'd say.
Thank you. David?
Yeah, thanks, Jon and Michelle. Yeah, it's a very pleasant experience from our side as well. I was wondering if you've been tracking the uptake from your recording community, particularly whether they've moved over to using the app for transects, because I know, it's not always necessarily the easiest solution to use an app for transect recording. So whether your experience is that people have moved that way, or whether they still use the paper forms and website for data entry.
So as I say, we haven't really pushed the app at all to them yet. We've not promoted it. I mean, we didn't even refer to it on our homepage. That's something we're planning on communicating to. From what I understand, is that the recorders have embraced the uses and are making good use of it. Liam is tracking and can see that those recorders are onboarding with that. We are going to have a technical challenge, as Michelle's just actually finished inputting some 2025 data manually onto the system, is whether we will be able to get some of those people off paper forms as well. Of course, we will always look to support all our recorders as much as possible, but certainly we will, as I say, Liam's very happy that he's active. The core set of recorders are making good use of the system, and he can see that them interacting with him. But as to stress, it is at present on the website of that. But as I say, it will be our intention that once this the acknowledgement again with the investment coming into National Biodiversity Data Centre is that we will have a coordinator role here now that will be responsible for both of the schemes, and that means we've got someone that can then start clearly communicating and engaging with recorders to hopefully promote those apps.
Great, thanks.
So Lars is commenting that the Transact part of the app is the most urgently in need for updating. Well, we take note of that, or David take note of that. I think we definitely work on it, but there's definitely also a priority element, and we are limited in resource and capacity to do all these implementation in the app. But it's definitely in the agenda to improve and make the uptake easier and the user experience also easier. We only have 30 minutes left, but the good news is we can fit that in. We will move on with David for the latest update about the eBMS database, and then Cristina with the app, or the other way around. It's up to you.
I can go first. I was just going to remind people about the data verification system. So I'll share my slides, and then Cristina will give an update on the latest app updates. So if you can see that. Yeah, I gave something similar when we met in Wageningen a year ago. Just to remind that it's been mentioned a few times, but we do have, as well as the system for recorders to enter data, etc., and coordinators to work with data, we do have this verification and validation system in the back end. So I just wanted to give a quick reminder of what that does. So it's distinguished between two elements. There's a validation, as we call it, which is basically checking that the data is complete in terms of how it's entered. It's a date, a valid date. The spatial information is handled properly. Time counts are within known ranges, etc. Photos have been captured correctly, etc. So these are sort of handled by the system, really. Well-designed system will take care of all this stuff. But what's separate is the verification, which is ultimately making a decision on whether the information is accurate, which is often related to the identification of the species. And clearly, these things two are related, that you need to understand the geographic range and the phonology of species to know, as part of the information that you will have to determine whether something is accepted, etc. So in terms of the tools to do this, those who have access, so that's the country coordinators, and other people who've been nominated with a role to act as a verifier, will be assigned this role in the system. We do that centrally, sort of manage who has access. But then those individuals will have access to the verification page, which will be a separate menu item on the system, and it looks something like this. But the main meat of the page is actually this sort of panel of controls and reports and maps to allow you to summarize the data and come to a decision as to whether you want to accept that record, effectively mark it as verified. So what you'll see in this page is you'll see a grid of records, and you'll see the grid of records which haven't yet been reviewed. So anything that's been reviewed will sort of be removed from the main view. So this is really records that need attention. Then at the top of the page, you will have various top-level filters. So the general ways of filtering that you'll want to do. But then there's also an option to create a more bespoke filter, which allows you to filter by species or groups or times of year or geographic areas, etc. So a way to sort of have a view on the data that you most want to look at. So you might want to focus on a particular species, for example. Then on the right-hand side, it shows you there'll be a map of, if you select a record, it will show you that record as a blue dot, and the other dots on the map are where the other records are for that species, so you can see your record in the wider context. Then there's a record details page, which gives you the full details of the record, the sort of verbatim, all the information captured about a record. There's also some other tabs in there which you may not have come across, which is there's a tab for recorder experience. This shows you, the track record of an individual recorder, so you can see whether they've been very active, and whether most of their records have been accepted, etc. Because often when reviewing data, you're sort of making a decision on the experience of the person as much as the information about the records. And then we also have a set of verification controls. So that panel of symbols, which is pointed to by the blue verification controls label, and they're where you make a decision whether you accept or reject, or you're not sure. There's also options to edit the record here. There's also the options to email the recorder. So that pops up a sort of a form where you can type a message if you want to ask for more details, etc. And you can also send the records to somebody else, another expert, if you want a second opinion, for example. So there's quite a lot going on this page, and there's some guidance, a PDF guidance, which gives a lot more detail. One important element of the verification system, again, which you may not have necessarily come across or realize is there, is particularly the 15-minute counts, where we effectively can create an occurrence record for every individual butterfly that's seen. It can generate a huge amount of occurrence records. So, for example, you do a 15-minute count, you see 100 Maniola, you've effectively got 100 rows of occurrences in the data grid. But we have got this shortcut symbol here, this bulk sample verification button, which allows you to, in this example of 100 Maniola occurrences, you can verify one of them and say, yes, Maniola was on that 15-minute count. I believe all these occurrences of Maniola in this sample. It will apply the verification decision to all of those occurrences within that sample. So that can sort of save a lot of working through records. So then the second element of the verification system is some automated checks that we run in the background. So as records come into the system, we run these checks to compare the records to a set of rules that we've got in the backend system, and these rules fall into different categories of rule sets. The main ones of interest here, I think, are we compare the occurrence of a record to the known distribution, and then we flag things up that are outside that known range. So that may indicate that these are been entered incorrectly, or they may be genuine range expansions or things being found in new places. But these checks are only really flagging records. They're not making any decisions about the records. They're just being used to highlight where you may want to review records in a bit more detail. So there's a geographic check. There's also a time of year check. So because we're mostly sampling adults, we know they have flight periods. So anything that falls outside of those expected flight periods, again, will be flagged for checking. We do also have some rule sets around the identification difficulty. We haven't applied these for butterflies because we don't have the rule sets in place yet, but that may be something we might consider in future. So there may be critical species that you really want to check all the records for if you know they're problematic to identify, for example. So you may want to give more attention to species that are tricky to ID. And what this means in practice is in terms of the geographic checks. So we have the range maps from, I think they came from the European Red List of Butterflies originally. Chris Francois provided them. These sort of summarize range maps. And what this example is showing is actually showing two records that have failed the check. The one in the in Turkey is clearly outside the known range at that point. The one in I think it's the Netherlands, isn't it? It's actually because these are only as good as how finely resolved the GIS layers are, and I think this sort of falls outside the coastal layer, for example. So again, these aren't perfect, but I think it can help highlight potential records to check. And similarly, this shows a couple of examples of this is from the Denmark scheme. Again, this is where Andreas is filtered to records which this is showing the more extensive way of creating a filter where you can just filter those records that have failed the checks. So this shows an example, and actually this is another case where the coastal GIS layers meant that these were flagged as being out of range when actually they were genuine. And in this case, Andreas went in and marked them as accepted through the verification approach. So that was the geographic one. The time of year one is a bit more tricky. So the way we've approached this is, again, through Chris running a script using GBIF data to sort of look at where the main periods of occurrence were for each individual species. And we break this down by geographic region. So we have effectively a estimated flight period for each species for each biogeographic region, which we then use to apply these time of year checks. But that was all I wanted to highlight. Really, it was just to remind people that this system was there. Again, it's another area where we could make improvements, but obviously we're always fighting with limited resources. There's only so much we can do, but I think it's a well-developed and well-tested system. It's the system we use in our UK biodiversity systems, used by hundreds and hundreds of experts to review millions and millions of records. So we try and make the job as easy as possible for the experts to review data in this way. Okay, so I'll hand over to Cristina for the app side.
Hi, hello everyone. Thanks, David. I will share my screen. Wait a second. Can you see it now? Yeah. I'm going to be short, just to say about the butterfly count update. We have been working a lot on many new versions before the season, and I wanted to present a few of them. I think you hear several in Laufen in last December, but just to show what is new. I think many of you recognize now a new design on the app. So now the homepage is different. It's showing you directly all the surveys. So if you remember well, the long press button, the purple button, if was here in the center, is not anymore there. So we removed that part, and now all the surveys are available in one look. So this is not everyone was super happy, but the majority yes. And And for beginners and people not used to the app is pretty convenient and intuitive. We also include many butterfly count out pictures. So now we are improving a bit the design on the guide. And also when you are doing the survey, when you select a butterfly species, I have to be clear on that. It's just for butterflies at the moment. You could see in a small image the butterfly, so that is also helping the beginners. Of course, we are not complete with all the European species. The most common are there, but we are still improving that gallery and added more species. I'm going to every feature we included. The projects were included before, but we improve it under the 15-minute counts. In additional details, you could see here the project, and we put it in a priority section. So they were before in the bottom, and now we put it in the beginning. So then everyone entering on the additional details, you could see it immediately. And you can select projects for 15-minute counts. And also for moth surveys. We also included the moth. In this case, it's in the bottom. It's not so relevant for the moth surveys at the moment, but it can be found also in the survey details. And maybe we will consider if the projects are also needed for transect. At the moment, it is not available. The projects are simple. You can see it on the app directly which project you are related and also to see all the projects. But to be able to create a project, you need to do it on the website. So you can go here under my data. So you need to be logged in and then you could go to the project. In this case, it's called 15-minute counts, but it will be called only projects, and then create all the new projects, and all the management of the project has to be done on the website. So you can edit records there, download everything, manage sites, include people. So everything more on the logistics and the management should be done on the website. By the way, not mentioned before, but today we are in maintenance of the eBMS website. So don't try to see this now because at the moment is shut down the system, but we will be online soon. For the moth traps, we were working quite a lot on the app. We included an option to do temporary moth traps. So in case you are traveling or just going for a survey occasionally, you can click this option temporary. So it's not considered that it's a recurrent moth survey. We also included the auto setting survey time. So the times and dates are as automatic collecting from the phone. And also we included the emptying time for cases where there are many individuals and it really takes long to empty the whole trap. We also made this optional, so you could add how long it takes you to empty the trap. We also work a lot on the algorithm to show the confidence of the identification of the species. So now it's much clearer how confident is the algorithm on the identification. And even here I cannot show it, but even with colors now it's red or orange or red on how much is the confidence for the algorithm. We also divided, before it was just one button and now we split it in two. So when you want to include the pictures for the moths, now you can select if you want to go directly to the gallery or to the camera. So here is the gallery, and in that case is accepting you to send in bulk all the images. No, so you can first focus on making all the pictures and later you can include it to the system and make to get the identification automatically by the algorithm, or you can go directly to the camera and do it one by one as you prefer, and is more preferably by the user. Now moving to sites, this was also included before, but it was a bit hidden. Now we make it more, we put it in a more priority place, like the project. So it's in the upper side in the additional details, and you could see the sites. If you didn't hear before this, we created the site basically to getting closer to a transect, so to where users normally do a 15-minute counts, and they do it frequently, no? So they are visiting the same place doing 15-minute counts. So for that, we created the site option that basically is draw an area for a meadow or something to do the 15-minute counts. Now they are separating the project and the sites. Before they were quite linked, and now they are independent from each other. If you enter on the sites, you can create any site you want directly on the app, and you can see the whole list and how far you are from those sites. And creating new sites is simple, easy, just giving a name and an area. So you just need to draw a polygon, and the system we will save it. What I mentioned is before the project and the site were related. Now they are completely independent. You can do 15-minute counts for one project, but also you could have sites and projects related. So in this case, I'm showing you how this project, Agroecology Transit, has sites included inside, but it's not compulsory. You can have it or not. No, you have the option, so it's not linked to any project. And when you do a site, it looks like this one. So for example, it's this one I have here close to my house. I created a site, an area where normally I do 15-minute counts. I don't have a transect there. And you could see even the boundaries of the site now in the map, and also the route of the 15-minute countdown inside of the site. So it's quite convenient and useful for the users. And in the moment you select one of the sites, so this one is the one I selected, immediately in the area section it should be shown which of the sites it has been selected. About the species list, it was mentioned before, the customized species list per country. We have been working quite a lot on this. And as you know, now we are like eBird app, so you need to download the species list you want to have in your phone. We are growing and we are including more and more countries, so it doesn't make sense to have, for example, for me, the Japanese species list. So I just have the European one, and you can download it directly, no? So you can download all in one go, like all butterflies, dragonflies, or moths, or you can also do it by countries. In this case, by countries is only at the moment for butterflies, but we will do it. We hope our possible moth project to also do it for the moths. So just to download the moth species per country. We organize it better, also just giving the name of the country and not confusing users. What else? Also, is possible for the species in the settings of the app. You could select how to display the name of the species. So you could select only common and scientific, or common only or scientific only name. So for example, here I selected common and scientific, and immediately in my surveys of 15-minute count, you could see both names showing it. But if you have the preference only for scientific, because in your country they don't use the common names, is also possible. For countries, we are growing more, so we also sorting the country list by continent. And if you select a continent, then you could see all the countries that are included there, because we are including more and more countries. We recently included Georgia, Zambia, Australia, and Central America. So that means that you can select these countries, but also the species list of those countries has been added to the eBMS system. And we try to do less European centric. So we are eBMS, but we are expanding outside. So we are trying to not only mention Europe and to be more involving other countries using this system. And we also updated a lot the translation that has been done. And I want to make a remark here, if you can help me to continue keeping the translation of your country, would be great, because every time we do an update, we update all the translations. And that was all from my side. I saw the chat was moving a lot, so I think there are some questions there.
Excellent. Yeah, so we are very close to 30 now. We have 5 minutes, 2 more talk. That will be difficult, but these were the most important talk actually in presentation. So I'm really pleased that Cristina, you show up all the new feature of the app, and obviously the chat is showing the interest in this, and all the site or the transect or the project feature, and also the species list regionalized, including phenology can be more better informed somehow or less coarsely. However, that comes to a cost that you might have more species falling just outside of that phenology if you are too restrictive. So omission and commission might be an issue. Do you want to be conservative or more and then an increased amount of verification that a coordinator can do? Any other question quickly? Maybe one to David or Cristina. If not, I'm going to move on. And
just one thing to mention, I couldn't include it on my presentation, sorry, but one thing we improved from the transect in the app, Lars, that you were asking, is that we now automated the collection of the variables. So temperature and wind is extracted already from the closest meteorological station. So at least that is done. Okay, yeah, now you can move, Reto, to the next one.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to do a very French way to do this. There's an old movie that does the Louvre, visit the Louvre in 15 minutes or even less. So I'm going to do 30 slides in 2 minutes or 3 minutes, I think, because I really want to leave some space and time to Chris. So essentially, this is the eBMS data harmonization. And I have to remind you that eBMS online system that we were mentioned, that data were put on from France and Ireland, are different from the eBMS database that we have locally, that is aggregating all the data that are produced and sent to you, but also they are the data and the backbone of the national EU and biodiversity policy, with their most recent nature restoration law. So they provide baseline to calculate indicator, assess trend, and they are also providing a tool to generate accountability to member state. So as you know, these are the transect, and there's more than 16,000 polywalk or transect in the database version 7.1. These databases are produced every year and rebuilt from scratch. So version 6 was up to 2023. The version 7 is up to 2024. And version 7.1 is an improvement in some issue we had with some data. So it's a major improvement or a bug fix, but it's not a major release as a new year added. Nevertheless, if you do validation of previous year and then we build the database version 8, these validation will be implemented in the next version. So everything you do currently or the past year will be implemented in the database. So overall, there's probably a lot of logo that are missing from BMS. Some I couldn't find, but there's 19 million record. There's a lot of kilometer walked. This is about 65 time Compostelle, Santiago Compostelle walk. And we covered 368 species. It's not all species, but it's a large proportion of European species. Here you see the growth within the EU and in Europe. And this is also used as the backbone for producing the Grassland Butterfly Indicator for Europe and EU27. So this is somehow how it works. So from the volunteer that you are managing and also the different scheme that are contributing to data, this is sent to eBMS online, and online is one of those systems that then I integrate into the overall comprehensive eBMS database to produce the GBI and also to provide data to researchers that are requesting the data and that you, data owner, are agreeing to. So there's quality control on your side, number one. That's quality control on the eBMS online system and the different national database. But there's also quality control when we integrate and harmonize the data to put that into one single database. And then there is quality control again when we calculate and produce the Grassland Butterfly Indicator. So quality control is, or the database is similar to what was presented for Indicia. So it's what, when, and where. Everything is created through script. So it's not me kind of changing the data model all the time. So we create the database and the new version using a SQL script. And then every table is commented and rebuilt from scratch. And then after that, we use our script, collecting all the data that you send us, and also the data that I retrieve from the online system to run and upload, to harmonize the different format and the time, the projection, and other things, and then push that to the comprehensive database. So in this case, we get the UK count, the species, the section, the different site visit, and the different schemes. So there's a wider countryside butterfly scheme that I also have to adjust the length because it's standardized to 2000 meter. And then we also have some check with the species. So we have a taxonomic data reference or a checklist that I merge to ensure that all the species that are listed, so this catch typo, this catch also synonymy that are used in different regions for same species. And as you might expect, the online system uses a similar checklist. So I usually don't have any issue with that, other than if there's an aggregate that is included that is not in my checklist as a specific species. So it also includes new aggregate if that is implemented. Then we have a log that is produced after the upload. So we can check, or I can document when it has been done, and also how many count have been reported, how many failed, and how many have been discarded. Then we can revisit if something has been discarded, why. Sometimes it's because there's no time, there's no site attached to a record, there's some orphan record that also happen. And then we do, for the Grassland Butterfly, a standardized extraction. So using that data set that we created, we extract always with the same query. We then produce a flight curve with using 15 windows across Europe. We assess those flight curve per region, per species, per windows. And then we calculate the collated index per BMS. Then we also assess those BMS, those trend and value annual indices per species. So in this case, you see circle around some dubious cases. So the one on top right, you see the first year is very low. So remember that this is on a log 10 scale. So the first year is most likely due to very few data and maybe an erroneous data, but very not in line with everything else. And also you notice that there's no confidence interval. You will also see in other cases, or at the bottom, in the bottom row, some confidence interval that are massive. So we might have to remove those to shorten the time series of those BMS of those sites. So we don't include those erroneous or risky data in the calculation of the Grassland Indicator. And then we produce filter. These filters are also automated and documented for transparency. Just to remind you that this is done by myself, but also through consultation with Chris. So it's not only me taking an answer, calculating the GPI, and then cherry picking what is going in, what is going out. This is a process that is done before. And then we do a weighting also. So not every country get the same weight for a specific species. So this is weighted according to their distribution and the area that is monitored that is intersecting that distribution. So UK BMS might have 2,000 or 3,000 transect, but it might not cover a large area or a similar area as Sweden, or even half of it in this case, even though Sweden has probably less transect than the UK. But the weight will be adjusted. So it's not a matter of how many transect they have, but more about the area that is represented in by those transect. Then we assess and validate the species level trend. And finally, we do a validation of the multi-species level. Ultimately, we produce a report, and then you are most likely to be a co-author on this if you are not so too recent to the system. And then you have the opportunity to contribute to this. Sorry, Lars, I really tried to hide you. So these gray boxes have been shifted. So these are commented by Lars, as you see here. This is an error from the projection in the large screen. Sorry. So essentially, the main challenge and improvement that we can do is data update for the national BMS. So one thing I'm always struggling is that the data are not arriving at the same time. So it's not a systematic scheduling providing the annual update. And that kind of make me dependent on when I have the full data set to build that database. Change in format is also very annoying. So when the system use always the same query or the same database, then it's smooth and we can recycle exactly the same code or apply the same rule. But if the header are changing or a new colony is appearing or the language is changing, then we have to revisit. And we do that all the time. So we do that quality check. And then on incomplete data, as was mentioned by Alexia, so sometimes we don't have precise habitat or spatial coordinate. So how we can improve it is a more integrated workflow and a pipeline. So obviously I can still improve these R script, and now they are running step by step, but we could do wrapper and a full pipeline automated with automated check, just like the online system. There's many visual and validation, manual and visual validation. And then we can integrate that in a R package, ideally, that also can produce and help maybe regional GPI production and quality check. Oops. Okay. And it's 36. I didn't manage to do it in 5 minutes, obviously. Sorry for that. If there's any question, maybe we can have a chat after, but I would like just for Chris to present the vision of this next, or in the meantime, as you're sharing, if there's a question, I'm happy to answer that.
Okay, thanks. You can hear me?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, because I had some problem with my microphone, but now it seems to be okay. Good, I will share my screen and then we can have a look at my ideas on this. Just a second. Yeah. In theory, you should see my screen now. Just a second. Okay. So it's just an idea how we move on in future, and that is something I wanted to talk about with all of you. So already explained by Reto, we have two what we still call eBMS. We have the online portal, which, for example, David and Cristina talked about, but we also have the central database that Reto just talked about, and which is used for the final calculation of all the indexes and trends. So far this, and I will only be talking about this latter one, so about the database that Reto so far manages, not the online system, which is a separate independent system. So far, this is only available for, we only use it for butterflies in Europe, not for other groups so far. Reto does the import of the data usually manually or maybe with some scripting, but principally he depends, as he already said, on the data which is sent to him. There is no API or whatever on this. And I call it professionalized because at the moment, Reto is the one who has the direct access. He has to ask others to send, and like he already explained, not everybody sticks to the agreed format, etc. And also on the other side, if data requests come, people have to go through the whole system, which is not a problem, but then Reto has to do work to deliver the data after approval. And this is all still done manually, which is fine, but we should think about how to change that. I call it professionalize. I don't know if that's a good word, but at least to make everything improve on how we do that. And we've been thinking about it because the funny thing is that at Dragonfly, people are in more or less the same position as we are. So they're also thinking of how to build a central database. So we've been really thinking of joining forces with them and working together. So principally, at the moment, the eBMS database is on UKCH servers. What we want to do is to work together with the Dragonfly people. So Butterfly Conservation Europe and Dragonfly Conservation Europe. We rent a server inside the EU, and we move the eBMS database to that central location. Not much will change actually because Reto will still have all the direct access to that. So it's only the location of the database which changes. But in the end, we want to expand it. So we want not just butterflies, but also to include moths and dragonflies on the longer run in the same system. Moths also because, of course, we hope that we will be granted a project on expanding moth monitoring in Europe, and it would be great to build further on the same system as we have. And also, I think will be an important thing in future is the expansion for, well, I call it the central name flex counts, but 15-minute counts. There are all kinds of alternatives also available. They just exist. For example, observation.org has also now this option. And instead of simply competing, I think it would be good if all the butterfly, moth, and dragonfly, well, to start with, counts of this 15-minute count type. They're all a little bit different. They all have their pros and cons. But at the end, it's always the same. You have a transect, you have a certain distance, you have a certain time that you spend on the transect. And the only thing is that you agree that for certain species groups, you've entered everything you've seen. So I think it would also be important to think about that. But that's all for the longer run. So what should we work to? That is that at the end, all butterfly monitoring schemes use a solid online database. So either you can move to the online eBMS system, which is already perfect for this. But of course, some of the larger schemes have their own system. Also in the Netherlands, for example, we have our own system, which is not a real problem because it's a decent database and we can always um, exchange data. It's good to remember that, well, we've seen the two examples of France and Ireland, so that we can assist in moving this, if you still have a relative simple system with spreadsheets, to the online eBMS system. And at the end, what would be important is that we are not all waiting for Reto to ask for the data, but at the end, all the online systems data should flow directly to the eBMS. So with also changes being processed. So if something is verified or not, or changed of species name, that should be done. So at the end, I think we should think of how to organize that all the data goes directly to the central database, because it will make it much easier and much faster to process the data. Of course, all BMSs should have direct access to the data. They should be organized, I think, best over an API. Here in the Netherlands, so for our system at Vlinderstichting, we use what we call an R API. So it's completely focused that you can ask the data in a way that you can process it directly in R, because that's what we use for everything at Vlinderstichting. But we can still think about how to organize that. It's another thing that I find important for the longer run, and that we should think of, is that at the moment, if somebody wants to use our data for research, you have to have a plan. You have to fill in the access for the data form, and then this is sent to all the BMS coordinators, and they will agree or not that you use their data. But the problem of this is also that nobody can, well, I would almost say, play with the data and do all kinds of analysis, find out new things, because not always do you know beforehand what you're exactly going to do. So I would be very much in favor that we somehow create, well, you can call it a green list or whatever, of people who do have access to the data over the API for the BMSs which have agreed to this, and they can work with the data. However, as soon as something comes out, we have to approve publication and everything over the following the system which there is now. But it is important that I think we need people who can work with the data and develop things for the future. I call it green list, but of course, all countries will always have, all the BMSs will always have rights to either join or not. So it might be that the green list does not include a certain BMS because they don't want to share this data. I think that should always be the case, but only that way. For example, it's now I do have access to part of the data, but I was simply not allowed to to do some of the analysis, simply because I would also have to write a demand for to do analysis. Anyway, what this means, we have to make new contracts with all the BMSs. We did a contract, I think, about 10 years ago. David arranged that. We signed it when we were here in Wageningen, but officially this has expired. Now, we still keep on using the same rules as we agreed to then, but I think we will have to redo them now. This is the moment to do that. And I might contact our Irish partners because they might have some good tips for this contract. So I think we have to include the concept of a green list of trusted researchers. So we have to move the database. I think it's important that we also expand it for moths and dragonflies, and maybe on the longer run also for other groups of pollinators, but at least make it possible that we can do that. And what's important is that we have to build APIs for data exchange. So data exchange in two directions, from the national databases or the online eBMS system to the central database from Rato, or the other way around, so that it's easy to ask for your data and work with the data. So download or use it directly. Now, if admire is granted, this is the call on moth monitoring, expanding moth monitoring in Europe. We might have some money available to move the moths also to the eBMS, but we also have to start preparing a consortium, getting approval from boards, prepare new contracts. After that, we can start thinking about renting a server and start the first things. If we all manage this in 26, well, I'm always optimistic, but it might not completely manage it. And after that, we will start with, for example, data pipelines and things like that. But it also depends on funding, because principally we don't have any basic funding for this at the moment. So I think that was it. I tried to keep it as quick as possible. And okay.
That was well done. Well managed in time. I mean, in time we are late, but in the 10 minutes that you had allocated. Any question, thought about this reaction? I see Jon has shown that he's happy to help or be involved in this. It sounds fantastic to have this vision, and it is fantastic and necessary. But there's a lot of things to think about data sharing and security and cybersecurity, obviously. But rest assured that everything will be done by the rule and fully transparent. No action will be taken with your data without your consent and information here. Yes, no question.
Okay.
We can definitely talk about this in the next coming year till the end of the project. Embrace, that is currently funded, and then admire, if that is funded, you will be involved. Also, just a reminder that if you have not sent your data to the eBMS update for 2025, I would be pleased to have them as soon as possible, because this is definitely dependent. If I don't receive them by September or mid-September, we will calculate the next GBI without your last update. So because we have to deliver a GBI 2025. We better be in and make it as simple as possible for you and for me. I think we can thank everyone for speaking. I'm really glad that Adrien and Alexia could share their experience and also the experience from Jon and Michelle. Two different angles, two different topic or different problem, but all related to how we bring in more data and aggregate or mobilize and harmonize these data together to produce a better indicator, more information, to better track the future and the past of butterfly. So with this, I think I will close this call. Thank you all.
So thank you so much, everyone, for being here. A pleasure to see you and to see that we can continue working on eBMS and improving everything.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.